Hi there and welcome to our session number 3 of GMAT Power Play, where we continue our journey of practicing critical reasoning together. And what we have picked up today is two very important question types that ask us to talk about strengthening and weakening the arguments. So we know that within critical reasoning there are 11 different question types that can get asked, along with some further subdivisions. And out of those 11, there are some questions that are extremely important or high frequency. Strengthening and weakening the arguments obviously fits under that bill. So let's go ahead and start our practice. But before that, I'll just quickly take you through what these essentially mean. So you know that strengthening essentially means supporting, right? So it basically means making something stronger. So when it comes to an argument, how do we make it stronger? So we know that typically an argument has a conclusion along with some premises. If you want to strengthen an argument further, you can bring in a new premise. You can state the assumption. An assumption is nothing but an unstated premise. So stating it, making that unstated part stated, visible, can enhance the impact. And finally, you can cite some facts, statistics, examples, evidence that goes on to support the premises or the assumptions which are already present in the argument. And its opposite, a lot of people believe, is to weaken. So in a way, yes, it is the opposite, but there is a tiny bit of difference here. When you want to weaken, you do that by attacking the premises or the assumptions. The key thing that I want you to keep in mind is that we never attack the conclusion directly. So we remain confined to only the premises or assumptions. We do not state the opposite of the conclusion. Okay, so that's the key difference. There are times when the examiner wants to confuse us and he takes advantage of that lacuna in our understanding and thus traps us. So here is your first question on the screen. I just want you to go ahead, pause the video right here, answer the question and then come back where we'll discuss it. Go ahead, all yours. Ready? Okay. So, since this is one of those this is one of those sessions where you do not know whether I'm going to ask you to strengthen or weaken, it becomes absolutely critical to follow the right sequence of reading. So, the very first thing that we read is the question stem. So, which of the following, if true, would most strengthen the astronomer's argument? So, key thing, we want to strengthen and we want to strengthen the astronomer's argument. So here is the astronomer's argument. Most stars are born in groups of thousands, each star in a group forming from the same parent cloud of gas. So we have this cloud or this nebula of gas. Now this gaseous cloud gives birth to thousands of stars. Now, each cloud has a unique homogeneous chemical composition. So, this cloud consists of some gases. Every gas obviously will have some sort of chemical composition. So, what we know is that this particular cloud happens to have a unique chemical composition. Therefore, whenever two stars have the same chemical composition as each other, they must have originated from the same cloud of gas. Okay, so now that we've read it, here is our conclusion. Done? Now, what has been given to support it? Stars are born from a cloud of gas. A single cloud of gas gives birth to thousands of stars. That cloud of gas happens to have a unique chemical composition. So if two stars happen to have the same chemical composition as each other, they must have belonged to the same cloud. So what is the assumption here? So one assumption is that when you go from cloud to star, the chemical composition does not change. Another assumption is that uh, all these stars, so not only it does not change, or even if it does change, it changes in a unique manner which is peculiar to that cloud, and every single star born out of that will also have that same unique signature. So the process does not really create stars with different composition. So all the stars will have the same composition and that composition does not change. These are the assumptions. So now that we have looked at that, let's go ahead and focus on our answer choices. So A, in some groups of stars, not every star originated from the same parent cloud of gas. Okay. So in some groups of stars, so most stars are born in groups of thousands. So notice the word most. So it basically means that a large majority, almost all maybe, or of them are born in groups of thousands, each star in a group forming from the same parent cloud of gas. So it says it happens for most of them. But then there can be some that do not. So if we know about some that do not obey this, then if two stars have the same chemical composition, they must have originated from the same cloud of gas or not. I mean, irrelevant to that, right? All it says is that they may not, that in a group, not every star comes from the same parent, same cloud. So as long as they do not come from the same cloud and they have different chemical compositions as a result, this argument remains true. But if they come from a different cloud yet have the same composition, then it will go on to weaken it. So it requires an added assumption, and that is what renders it irrelevant. B, clouds of gas of similar or identical chemical composition may be remote from each other. Okay. So we are now talking about multiple clouds. So let's say there are two clouds. This is one cloud and here is another one, which is far away. Now we are saying that these happen to have similar or identical chemical compositions. And they may be remote from each other. So he's saying, so the key thing here is that it is possible for us to have two different clouds that have identical chemical composition. Now if this is true, and we see two stars with same chemical composition, in this particular case they'll actually belong to two different clouds and not from the same cloud of gas. And therefore this is not going to strengthen the conclusion. It tells us that, hey, there is a possibility that two stars with identical composition actually belong to two different clouds. So this will weaken it for us. Definitely ruled out. Okay, see, whenever a star forms, it inherits the chemical composition of its parent cloud of gas. So you notice this is one of our assumptions, that when you go from a cloud to the star, the chemical composition does not change, because if it changes, then there can be some issues. Then you would not be able to link it with the parent cloud. So this states the assumption, and we know that stating the assumption is one way of strengthening it. So let's keep it in the running. Now, why am I not choosing it outright? I'm not choosing it outright as my answer because of the presence of the word most. Most tells us that it's possible for you to have more than one answer choice that strengthens. And you are in that case supposed to pick up the best one. Let's look at D now. Many stars in vastly different parts of the universe are quite similar in their chemical composition. Very clearly weakens. Vastly different parts of the universe are quite similar. So now there is a possibility that it is consistent with the argument if we assume that that stars formed from the same parent cloud of gas can travel vast distances and thus lie away from each other. Then yes, but then we don't know that, right? Typically a group of stars would usually stick together, right? Why would they really travel to another corner of the universe? And if they are traveling to another corner of the universe, it automatically creates this possibility that, hey, maybe different stars born out of different clouds can yet have similar compositions. That's why we can. E, astronomers can at least sometimes precisely determine whether a star has the same chemical composition as its parent cloud of gas. Okay, but then how is it relevant for our conclusion? He says that, okay, there are times when we are able to precisely determine that the chemical composition of the star is identical to this. Our assumption is that we are able to do that. Why? At least sometimes. So that in fact casts suspicion. It somehow tells us that, hey, we may not be able to do that every time, and therefore, but then even that, even if we are not able to do it, when we are able to do it, will this conclusion hold true? It can, right? So therefore, this is again irrelevant. And that is why our best answer here is option C. So with that, let's move over to the next question now. Once again, I want you to hit pause, go ahead, answer the question, and then we'll talk. Okay, so I hope that you've answered the question on your own. Starting with the question stem, we are being asked to weaken the theatre goer's argument. So let's read it. Theatre goer. In January of last year, the Megaplex chain of movie theatres started popping its popcorn in canola oil instead of the less healthful coconut oil that it had been using until then. Now Megaplex is planning to switch back, saying that the change has hurt popcorn sales. So what do we know? We know that Megaplex shifted from coconut oil to canola oil for frying their popcorn, and they are saying that this move has led to a reduction in their popcorn sales. That claim is false, however. Okay, so the theatre goer is questioning it. He's saying that, okay, when these guys say that this change has hurt popcorn sales, this claim is false. So basically, what the theatre goer is saying is that popcorn sales have not gone down. Since, according to Megaplex's own sales figures, Megaplex sold 5% more popcorn last year than in the previous year. So, on what basis is he saying that it has not gone down? Their popcorn sales is up by 5%. So, how are they saying that the sales have gone down when very clearly the sales have gone up going by their own data? Now, we want to weaken the theatre goer's argument. So, basically, we want something that harms this. It harms this and goes on to support the stance taken by Megaplex, whichever way you want to look at it. So let's see. So A, when it switched from using coconut oil to using canola oil, Megaplex made sure that the chain received a great deal of publicity stressing the health benefits of the change. Okay, so how does that help us prove that sales have not gone down? How does that help us prove that sales have indeed gone down? So we want to prove that sales have gone down, right? We want to weaken this argument that despite an increase of 5% in the popcorn sales as compared to last year, you're saying the sales still have somehow magically gone down. So how do we do that? So it is irrelevant. You can rule it out. Megaplex makes more money on food and beverages sold at its theatres than it does on sales of movie tickets. Once again, irrelevant to the sales figure of popcorn. It is not about the breakup of the revenue from different categories. It is about whether the sales from popcorn have gone down or not. See, in a survey to determine public response to the change to canola oil, very few of Megaplex's customers, said that the change had affected their popcorn buying habits. So, this, if true, will tell us that, hey, customers are impervious to that change in oil. They have not changed their popcorn buying habit, which means that the sales should be what it was earlier. That means sales have not gone down. So if I look at C, this goes on to strengthen the theatre goer's argument. We want to, on the other hand, weaken. So let's rule it out. D, total sales of all food and beverage items at Megaplex's movie theatres increased by less than 5% last year. Okay, so we're saying that Megaplex earns revenue from this category called food and beverages. Within food and beverages, there is a part which belongs to popcorns, and then the rest of it probably would come from other items. You may have nachos, burger, pizza, Coke, Pepsi, whatever. So the other categories have grown less than 5%, whereas popcorns have grown, we know, at 5%. So what does it tell us? It goes on to tell us that the popcorn sales have outstripped the other categories. So the probability is that their sales have not gone down, which means that we are once again supporting the theatre goers argument. So let's rule it out. E. Total attendance at megaplexes movie theatres was more than 20% higher last year than the year before. Oh, now what E brings in is a new data point. They're saying that when you compare sales across 2 years, you are assuming that the viewership remained constant. So 1,000 people watched movie at a theatre last year, 1,000 people have watched movies this year, and the sales of popcorns have increased by 5%. But then what E says is that, hey, that is not right. In reality, last year 1,000 people watched the movie. This year 1,200 people watched the movie. So logically, your popcorn sales should also have risen by 20%. But in reality, it has not risen by 20%. It has risen by only, or increased by only 5%. So if this is true, then it gives Megaplex something to challenge the theatre goers argument. This goes on to question the assumption involved in the argument presented by the theatre goer, where the base was kept the same, base of the viewers was kept the same. So because it challenges your assumption, it definitely goes on to weaken, and that is why this is going to be our answer to this particular question. With that, let's move over to our next one. Here it is. Pause the video, go ahead, solve it, and then we'll talk. Ready for the discussion? Let's go. Which of the following, if true, most strongly supports the claim that the proposal, if carried out, will have the announced effect? So support is strengthening. So when we read this, there is going to be a claim made by someone, a proposal given by someone, and we are saying that if that proposal is carried out, it will have that desired effect. So let's see. So fire commissioner says the vast majority of false fire alarms are prank calls made anonymously from fire alarm boxes on street corners. Okay. Since virtually everyone has access to a private telephone, these alarm boxes have outlived their usefulness. Therefore, we propose to remove the boxes. Removing the boxes will reduce the number of prank calls without hampering people's ability to report a fire. So what exactly is the proposal here? The proposal is remove the boxes. Now, why do we want to remove the boxes? What is the reason? It will reduce the number of prank calls without hampering people's ability to report a fire. So on what basis are we saying it will reduce the number of prank calls? See, a vast majority of these prank calls are made anonymously from fire alarm boxes. So you go out to the street, there is a fire alarm box, you use that to call and report a fire, and it is anonymous, you do not know who it belongs to. So maybe there was a time when people did not own telephones. Maybe back in that era, those phones played an important role. But today, almost everyone, or virtually everyone, has access to a private telephone. So we are saying that, so one of the assumptions here is that when you are on a private telephone, you are no longer anonymous. So the key thing here was that anonymity enabled them to make prank calls. If I pick up my cell phone and let's say call the railway station or the airport authority and report a bomb threat, then they'd be able to trace the call back to me. I'll not really be able to send them on a wild goose chase and report something which is false or fake, isn't it? On the other hand, if I know that, hey, they will not be able to track me, I'm going to remain anonymous, then that may encourage me to maybe engage in such foolish behavior. So one of those assumptions as a result is that private telephone means you are no longer anonymous. So let's go now. We want to support the fact that we should remove the boxes, and even when we remove it, announced effect is, so this is the effect. So I'll just write it. That's a proposal. So if we do it, the announced effect, we'll have the announced effects. Okay, let's start. A, the fire department traces all alarm calls made from private telephones and records where they came from. So what does it mean? These callers are not going to remain anonymous. And since that anonymity led to a greater volume of prank calls, non-anonymity should reduce it. So it is consistent. It is going to reduce the number of prank calls without hampering people's ability to report a genuine actual fire. Strengthens. Maintaining the fire alarm boxes costs Springfield approximately $5 million annually. Irrelevant. The question is whether it will reduce the number of prank calls without hampering people's ability to report fire or not. This is what we have to measure it against. The cost bit is not a part of this argument. A telephone call can provide the fire department with more information about the nature and size of a fire than can an alarm placed from an alarm box. Fantastic. But then notice these are also prank calls. So it is merely, so maybe these fire alarm boxes have two provisions. You can call or you can ring the alarm. Call is more effective than the alarm. But then if we remove them, are we reducing the number of prank calls without compromising on actual fire reports or not? Irrelevant. Because it just says a telephone call, whether it is private or made from the alarm box, won't even matter. Responding to false alarms significantly reduces the fire department's capacity for responding to fires. Okay, that could be one of the motivations behind fire commissioner's action, but then how does it go on to support that, hey, if we remove them, we'll be able to reduce the number of prank calls without hampering their ability to report a fire? Irrelevant. On any given day, a significant percentage of the public telephones in Springfield are out of service. Does it strengthen it? We are talking about private telephone. This talks about public telephones. So a significant percentage, and what exactly is a significant percentage? I think 5% won't be a significant percentage, but I think at around 20%, maybe we can start feeling that they are significant, right? So out of 100 water bottles that I bought last year, if say 15 to 20 turned out to be fakes, spurious, I'll call that significant. So maybe 15 to 20% of them are out of order. So what? And since these calls are part of fire alarm boxes on street corners, they are part of those public telephones. So if 15 to 20% of them are out of order, if we remove the rest of them, won't it affect our ability to report a fire? The rest of them were working, people could have called. So this again does not go on to support it. You can remove it. So A is the only one that strengthened it, and that is why that should be the one chosen as our desired answer. Let's go ahead and talk about question number 4 now. Pause the video here, answer it, and then we'll see. Ready? Let's go. Which of the following would, if known to be true, most help justify the explanation offered above? So when you justify something, you give some reasons to support it, and thus we know it is a strengthening question. We also know that in this paragraph above, we'll find an explanation. Let's check. Researchers asked volunteers to imagine they were running a 5-kilometer race against 50 people and then against 500 people. Races in each of which the top 10% would receive a $1,000 prize. Asked about the effort they would apply in the respective cases, the volunteers indicated on average that they would run slower in the race against the greater number of people. A likely explanation of this result is that those of the volunteers who were most comparatively inclined, and comparatively inclined is when you compare yourself against others. they determined, perhaps unconsciously, that extreme effort would not be worthwhile in the 500 competitor race. And would not be worthwhile basically would mean that they believed that they cannot be in the top 10%. So since you cannot be in the top 10%, why go all out? Why put in that kind of effort? So in a 50 people race, if you are among the top 5, you get those $1,000. In a 500 people race, you need to be among the top 50 in order to get that. And so volunteers on average said that they'll run slower. Not everybody, but we don't know the size of the volunteer or the survey size here, but let us say there were 100 volunteers. Okay, in a 50 people race, they on an average said they'll run faster. In a 500 people, on average they said they'll run slower. And we are saying that the average is being pulled down by a particular group within these volunteers. Which ones? The ones who were most comparatively inclined. So they felt that यार मैं जीतूंगा तो हूं नहीं, मैं टॉप 50 में आ तो पाऊंगा नहीं, कहां मैं कहां, 500 लोगों में तो बहुत ज्यादा है, 50 लोग तो ऐसे होंगे जो मुझसे अच्छे होंगे ही होंगे, तो कोई फायदा नहीं है ऑल आउट जाने का. तो इसने एक एक्सप्लेनेशन दी, हमें बताना है कि एक्सप्लेनेशन सही है. चलिए देखें. The volunteers who were most comparatively inclined were also those that had the greatest desire to win $1,000 prize. But ये justify थोड़ी करेगा, ये तो weaken करेगा. अगर इनकी desire strong होगी तो ये तो तेज दौड़ेंगे फिर. If these are the same set of people who wanted that prize, why would they go slow? B, the volunteers who were the least comparatively inclined had no greater desire to win the $1,000 than those who were the most comparatively inclined. ओके, तो हम बोल रहे हैं यार एक कंपैरेटिवली इंक्लाइंड सबसे ज्यादा, एक सबसे कम, दोनों की डिजायर टू विन वाज इक्वल. बट देन इनमें डिफरेंस क्या था? एक कंपैरेटिवली इंक्लाइंड है, वो अपने आप को दूसरों से कंपेयर करता है, तो अपनी एबिलिटी नहीं देख रहा है, वो देख रहा है इतने सारे लोगों में बहुत अच्छा नहीं हूं, मैं नहीं जीतूंगा. तो ये तो मतलब तो ये कोई इससे इस एक्सप्लेनेशन के साथ रेलेवेंट नहीं है ना. हाउ डज इट टेल अस दैट इट वाज इंडीड a reaction of these guys that led to a reduction? अच्छा, डिजायर सेम थी दोनों की, तो मतलब उससे क्या अभी भी ये कंसिस्टेंट हो भी सकता है, नहीं भी हो सकता, वी डू नॉट नो. दिस इज इररेलेवेंट, ये तो डेफिनेटली वीकन कर ही रहा था. सी, द वॉलंटियर्स हु वर मोस्ट कंपैरेटिवली इंक्लाइंड वर लाइकली टू इंडिकेट दैट दे वुड रन द टू रेसेस एट द सेम स्पीड. दिस वंस अगेन वीकन्स इट. हम तो ये मान करके चल रहे हैं कि अगर एवरेज इनकी वजह से पुल डाउन हुई तो यही लोग हैं जो बोल रहे थे हम स्लो दौड़ेंगे, तो हमें स्ट्रेंथन करना है, ये भी गया. डी, द मोस्ट कंपैरेटिवली इंक्लाइंड वॉलंटियर्स बिलीव्ड दैट दे वर सिग्निफिकेंटली लेस लाइकली टू फिनिश इन द टॉप 10% इन द रेस अगेंस्ट 500 देन इन द रेस अगेंस्ट 50. हाँ, सो ये तो हमारी अजम्पशन थी ना कि यार हम तो जीत ही नहीं पाएंगे 500 में. So this states that assumption, so this definitely strengthens. Volunteers were chosen for participation in the study on the basis of answers to various questions designed to measure the degree to which the volunteers were comparatively inclined. Irrelevant है यार, है ना, तो ये भी हटा दो. So D is going to be our answer to this particular question. वो कैसे चूज हुए थे, इन पे मेजर होके आए थे नहीं आए थे, इससे क्या फर्क पड़ता है? हो सकता है बाद में चेक करने पे निकले कि यार कंपैरेटिवली इंक्लाइंड थे, तब भी तो ये एक्सप्लेनेशन ट्रू हो सकती है. हो सकता है सिलेक्शन में कोई बायस हो जिसकी वजह से, वो पता नहीं है, तो डेफिनेटली स्ट्रेंथन कर नहीं पाएगा, वीकन भी कर सकता है ये तो. So here is your next question. Pause the video, answer this, and then we'll talk. All right. So most seriously calls into question basically means to weaken, right? अब देखते हैं. Most of the year, the hermit thrush, a North American songbird, eats a diet consisting mainly of insects. But in autumn, as the thrushes migrate to their Central and South American wintering grounds, they feed almost exclusively on wild berries. Wild berries, however, are not as rich in calories as insects. Yet thrushes need to consume plenty of calories in order to complete their migration. One possible explanation is that berries contain other nutrients that thrushes need for migration and that insects lack. So देखो, हमें क्या पता है? thrushes नॉर्मली खाते हैं इंसेक्ट, माइग्रेशन के दौरान खाते हैं बेरीज. दूसरी चीज हमें क्या पता है? बेरीज में कम कैलोरीज होती हैं एज कंपेयर टू इंसेक्ट्स. तीसरी चीज हमें क्या पता है? यार माइग्रेशन के टाइम पे आपकी कैलोरी रिक्वायरमेंट बढ़ जाती है। जब आपकी कैलोरी रिक्वायरमेंट बढ़ जाती है तो आप ऐसे फूड पे क्यों शिफ्ट करेंगे जो कैलोरी रिच ना हो? आप तो उल्टा रिच फूड पे जाएंगे ना। जैसे होता नहीं है विंटर में हमारी बॉडी को अपने आप को गर्म रखने के लिए ज्यादा एनर्जी स्पेंड करनी पड़ती है, तो विंटर्स में बहुत सारे लोग वो थोड़ा गरिष्ठ भोजन है ना, रिच फूड, हाँ वो पिन्नियाँ, गोंद पाक और पता नहीं क्या क्या, गाजर पाक, मूंग का हलवा, मूंग दाल का हलवा, वो सब खाना शुरू कर देते हैं, है ना। तो ऐसा क्यों करेंगे? तो ये बोल रहे हैं कि यार बेरीज में कुछ और, तो इसका एक रीजन किसी ने प्रपोज किया है कि यार इसमें ना कोई और न्यूट्रिएंट्स होते होंगे जो इनको चाहिए होते हैं माइग्रेशन के टाइम पे, और जो इंसेक्ट्स में नहीं होंगे, अदरवाइज क्यों ही खाएंगे ये, राइट। चलिए, पर हमें बोलना है कि यार ये एक्सप्लेनेशन जो है हमें प्रूव करना है कि सस्पेक्ट है, ये सही नहीं है। चलिए देखें, hermit thrushes if undernourished are unable to complete their autumn migration before the onset of winter. रेलेवेंट है? नहीं, है ना। इस पूरे आर्ग्यूमेंट में इस एक्स के ये क्यों स्विच कर रहे हैं इंसेक्ट से बेरीज पे, और क्यों उसका कारण ये न्यूट्रिएंट्स ना होकर के कुछ और है, उससे इसका कोई कनेक्शन नहीं है। बी, इंसेक्ट स्पीशीज कंटेन सर्टेन न्यूट्रिएंट्स दैट आर नॉट फाउंड इन वाइल्ड बेरीज। ओके, दिस लुक्स सस्पिशियसली राइट कि भाई बेरीज में ना न्यूट्रिएंट है जो थ्रशेस को चाहिए, हाँ इसलिए इनको खा रहे हैं, इंसेक्ट्स में वो है नहीं। बी बोल रहा है इनमें कुछ न्यूट्रिएंट्स हैं दैट आर नॉट फाउंड इन वाइल्ड बेरीज, बट देन द क्वेश्चन हियर इज, आर दीज द न्यूट्रिएंट्स दैट thrushes need? If yes, तो फिर ये एक्सप्लेनेशन गलत हो जाएगी, इफ नो तो फिर ये एक्सप्लेनेशन इररेलेवेंट हो जाएगी। तो इसको रनिंग में रख लेते हैं। For songbirds, catching insects requires the expenditure of significantly more calories than eating wild berries does. Okay, now if this is true, तो इसमें हम अज्यूम कर रहे थे कि यार बेरीज में इतनी कैलोरीज तो होती नहीं जितनी इंसेक्ट में है, तो रीजन यही रहा होगा। बट देन देखो, इंसेक्ट इज अ लाइव ऑर्गेनिज्म, वो उड़ेगा, भागेगा, बचेगा, आपको उसके पीछे करके पकड़ने में भी तो कैलोरीज लगानी पड़ेंगी, जबकि बेरीज तो वही है पौधे पे लगी हुई, अब जाकर के सीधा सीधा खा सकते हैं। तो ये एक नई चीज ला रहा है हमारे ध्यान में कि जो अजम्पशन थी हमारी यहाँ पे कि बेरीज से भी कैलोरीज मिल रही है, इंसेक्ट से भी कैलोरीज मिल रही है, इंसेक्ट से ज्यादा मिलती हैं, हम एक अज्यूम करके चल रहे थे कि दोनों कैलोरीज को एक्वायर करने में हमारा एफर्ट, हमारा एनर्जी एक्सपेंडिचर सिमिलर है, बट ये बता रहा है तो सिमिलर है ही नहीं। सो देयरफॉर दिस डेफिनेटली क्वेश्चन इट सेज दैट दे मे हैव मूव्ड टू बेरीज टू इंक्रीज देयर कैलोरी इनटेक, नेट कैलोरी इनटेक। तो हालांकि बेरीज से कैलोरीज कम मिल रही हैं, लेकिन वो कैलोरीज उनको खाने में कब स्पेंड भी तो कम करनी पड़ रही ना एज कंपेयर टू इंसेक्ट। सो मे बी they are still net calorie positive and thus this nutrient explanation is not needed. So this can weaken it. Let's keep it in the running. Along the hermit thrushes migration routes, insects are abundant throughout the migration season. This in fact goes on to strengthen it. यार इंसेक्ट्स अवेलेबल है फिर भी बेरीज खा रहे हैं, तो मतलब कोई और ही कारण रहा होगा, एंड दो दैट कारण कैन बी न्यूट्रिएंट्स। देयर आर सम स्पीशीज ऑफ वाइल्ड बेरीज दैट hermit thrushes generally do not eat even though these berry species are exceptionally rich in calories. तो वंस अगेन कैलोरी नहीं, कोई और रीजन है जिसकी वजह से खा रहे हैं, तो ये भी स्ट्रेंथन कर रहा है, आप इसे भी रूल आउट कर दें, राइट। सो दैट्स हाउ सी गोज ऑन टू बिकम आवर बेस्ट आंसर। बी में हमें फिर भी अज्यूम करना पड़ रहा था, सी में ऐसा कुछ नहीं, हमें पता चल रहा है फॉर बर्ड्स कैचिंग इंसेक्ट्स रिक्वायर्स मोर कैलोरीज एज कंपेयर टू ईटिंग वाइल्ड बेरीज। So C it is. And here comes the next question. Pause, answer, and then we'll talk. Ready? आइए देखें। So which of the following if true most seriously weakens the argument? तो सीधा सीधा क्वेश्चन स्टेम है, escalating worldwide demand for corn is expected to cause the market price of corn to rise sharply and remain high. Okay. So कॉर्न की डिमांड बढ़ेगी, डिमांड बढ़ेगी तो क्या होगा भाई, इसके प्राइसेस भी बढ़ेंगे। सो ऑल्दो कॉर्न इज एक्सटेंसिवली यूज्ड एज फीड फॉर लाइवस्टॉक, लाइवस्टॉक फीड अकाउंट्स फॉर ओनली अ स्मॉल फ्रैक्शन ऑफ द रिटेल प्राइस ऑफ मीट। ओके, तो हमें पता चल रहा है कि भाई ये कॉर्न के बहुत सारे यूज होते होंगे, जैसे हमारे यहाँ पे एथेनॉल बना के पेट्रोल में मिलाया जा रहा है, है ना। तो ऐसे ही एक यूज कॉर्न का क्या है, आप लाइव स्टॉक को खिलाते हैं। तो लाइव स्टॉक यानी कि आप लेट्स से कोई बंदा है जो कैटल फार्मिंग कर रहा है ना, गाय पाल रहा है, भैंस पाल रहा है, बकरियां पाल रहा है, वटेवर, उनको खिला रहा है कॉर्न। हाँ, तो उनकी डाइट का, सो कॉर्न इज एक्सटेंसिवली यूज्ड एज फीड फॉर लाइव स्टॉक। बट अगर अब उसके बाद में मान लीजिए आप उस लाइव स्टॉक को मार करके उसका मीट बेचते हैं, तो मीट का एक रिटेल प्राइस होएगा। रिटेल प्राइस ऑब्वियसली किस चीज पे डिपेंड करता है, आपकी कॉस्ट पे। अब दिमाग में क्या आएगा कि कॉर्न इज वन ऑफ द कॉस्ट्स, तो कॉर्न का प्राइस बढ़ा तो मीट का प्राइस भी बढ़ेगा। लेकिन ये यहाँ पे क्या बता रहा है कि जो लाइव स्टॉक को जो आप फीड देते हैं, इट अकाउंट्स फॉर ओनली अ स्मॉल फ्रैक्शन ऑफ द रिटेल प्राइस। तो यानी कि रिटेल प्राइस में यार अगर 1 या 2% कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन ही है फीड का, और उस फीड के अंदर भी लेटस से कॉर्न का कुछ स्पेसिफिक कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन है, सारा का सारा फीड तो कॉर्न नहीं होगा ना, होपफुली, है ना। और इसमें भी अगर कॉर्न है तो शायद कॉर्न का नेट contribution to the retail price is maybe what, around 1%। तो इस केस में अगर ये बढ़ भी जाता है, मान लो कॉर्न का प्राइस जब आप बोल रहे हैं राइज शार्पली एंड रिमेन हाई, अगर डबल भी हो गया तो भी कोई खास फर्क नहीं पड़ा। मतलब पहले 100 रुपए में कोई चीज बिकती थी, उसकी कॉस्ट में 1 रुपया कॉर्न से आ रहा था, अब वो 1 रुपए की कॉस्ट बढ़ के 2 रुपए हो गई, तो अब वो ठीक है। अब मीट के प्राइस में वो 1 से 2 हो भी गया तो कोई खास फर्क नहीं पड़ने वाला है ना, बिकॉज इट्स वेरी माइनर थिंग फॉर दैट रिटेल प्राइस। तो शायद क्या पता बंदा एब्जॉर्ब ही कर ले रिटेलर उसे। सो देयरफॉर द इंक्रीज इन कॉर्न प्राइसेस इज वेरी अनलाइकली टू प्रोड्यूस एनी कंपेरेबल लॉन्ग टर्म इंक्रीज इन द रिटेल प्राइस ऑफ मीट। चलिए देखें। सो द कॉस्ट ऑफ शिपिंग एंड हैंडलिंग मीट हैज आल्सो रिजन शार्पली। नाउ व्हाट डज दिस टेल यू? इट टेल्स यू दैट देयर कैन बी एन इंक्रीज इन द रिटेल प्राइस ऑफ मीट। लेकिन हमारा कंक्लूजन यहां पे क्या है कि इंक्रीज इन कॉर्न प्राइसेस इज वेरी अनलाइकली टू लीड टू इंक्रीज इन रिटेल प्राइस ऑफ मीट। वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट कॉर्न प्राइस का इंपैक्ट नहीं पड़ेगा रिटेल प्राइस पे, बाकी चीजों का पड़े तो पड़े, दैट इज इररेलेवेंट। सो आप इसे हटा सकते हैं। बी, livestock producers who currently use corn to feed their livestock have the option of switching to other kinds of feed. Okay, so मतलब ये तो एक तरह से स्ट्रेंथन ही करेगा कि अगर ज्यादा बढ़ भी गया तो दूसरा फीड देना शुरू कर देंगे, तो रिटेल प्राइस पे फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा। तो चूंकि स्ट्रेंथन कर रहा है, हटा ही दो। द राइजिंग कॉस्ट ऑफ फीड इज लीडिंग सम लाइवस्टॉक प्रोड्यूसर्स टू लीव द बिजनेस, देयरबाय रिड्यूसिंग द फ्यूचर सप्लाई ऑफ मीट। नाउ दिस कैन वीकन, कि भाई अगर कॉर्न का प्राइस बढ़ने से कुछ प्रोड्यूसर, ये तो रिटेल प्राइस है, ये तो वो है जो दुकान में मिल रहा है, लेकिन अब सोचो वो किसान एक लेटस से प्याज उगा रहा है, अनियंस उगा रहा है, हाँ, वो बाजार जाता है तो वो 8 रुपए किलो बेच रहा है, आगे वो 30 रुपए किलो बिक रहा है, तो वो 30 रुपए किलो के लिए 1%, हाँ, वॉज 30 पैसा, बट 8 रुपए किलो वाला जो बना रहा है कॉस्ट तो उसकी है ना, उसके लिए तो 30 पैसा रिप्रेजेंट्स अ लार्जर परसेंटेज। तो हो सकता है कि वो जो प्रोड्यूसर है वो सस्टेन ना कर पाए, और अगर वो सस्टेन नहीं कर पाया तो फ्यूचर सप्लाई ऑफ मीट कम हो जाएगी, और अगर फ्यूचर सप्लाई ऑफ मीट कम हो गई तो प्राइसेस मीट के बढ़ेंगे, राइट। सो increase in corn prices can affect the retail prices of meat in the long term. So this definitely weakens it. So इसको running में रखते हैं. Worldwide demand for grains other than corn has also increased. Irrelevant. The price of corn affects the retail price of a variety of other food products more than it affects the price of meat. ये तो consistent ही है इससे, तो ये भी हटा ही दो. So weaken तो खाली C ही कर रहा है. So that is our answer. So that's what I brought for you today. If you want to reach out to me, you know where you can. That's my Telegram group, and success takes time. Keep showing up. So hopefully you are already doing really well in critical reasoning, but in case you are not, in case you are facing some issues, don't worry. A part of critical reasoning involves skills like comprehension. So you may need to put in that kind of effort. A part of critical reasoning is about retraining your brain to think in a certain way, which again takes a bit of effort and a bit of time. So keep putting in this effort, and I'm sure you'll go on to do amazingly well. So that's it from me today. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, have fun.